Dear students, as we have already learned that how to enter the data into SPSS software for testing the single population median using the sign test, we have already learned the procedure that we would have to follow to get the p-value of the sign test. So now I would be showing you that how to interpret the results we have obtained under the SPSS software. So students, let me remind you the very problem what we have discussed under the data entry procedure. That was that we would have to test the hypothesis on 0.05 level of significance about the endurance scores of animals. And there we were asked to test that the median endurance score of animals with electrodes implanted in their forebrain is less than 97.5. That means we would have to test that if we will have to formulate the hypothesis for that. It is stating that the median has to be less than 97.5 under the alternative, whereas under the H0 we would have to test that M has to be greater than equal to 97.5. So that was what we were asked to test in this statement. So we have entered the data into SPSS. We have followed the procedure to obtain the Wilcoxon signed rank test, which is the non-parametric alternative of one sample t-test. So let us now look at the interpretation of the results, that what we are going to interpret or infer out of the results we have obtained in SPSS. So students, as I've told you that we were asked to apply the sign test, and we have followed the entire procedure. We have entered this data into SPSS. So now we are going to conclude our results, whether to accept our null hypothesis or to reject on the basis of the sampled data. So this is the procedure I've outlined for you so that you can see that what type of hypothesis we would have to take up and what kind of procedure we would have to opt to interpret the results. So the first thing we would have to do is to formulate the null and alternative hypothesis. So under the alternative hypothesis, as I've told you that we were asked to test that median has to be less than 97.5. So level of significance is 0.05 as it was mentioned in the statement. Test statistic is indicating that we are going to follow the W. W stands for Wilcoxon signed rank test. And students, it follows the standard normal distribution. So Z stands for the standard normal distribution, which is a normal distribution with zero mean and standard deviation 1. We have obtained the calculated p-value from the SPSS, and it comes out to be 0.008. Usually, the SPSS provides us with the two-tailed p-value. But students, if you just look into the alternative hypothesis, we have just formulated that our alternative hypothesis is one-tailed. So, what we are going to do then, we would have to divide this two-tailed p-value by 2 so that we can obtain the one-tailed p-value. So students, देखिए मैंने ऐसे ही किया है. I have divided the two-tailed p-value by 2 in order to get the p-value for the one-tailed test. And that comes out to be 0.004. Now, we would have to compare this calculated p-value with that of the observed p-value. Now, students, what is the observed p-value? Observed p-value is our alpha value, which is 5% in this case. So, next thing is that we would have to design the critical region, which is usually known as the rejection region. So, we will have to reject H0 if our calculated p-value remains less than 0.05. Otherwise, we accept our null hypothesis. So, students, as our p-value, which is the calculated p-value, that comes out to be 0.004 and it remains less than 0.05. So, we reject H0 and conclude that median endurance score of animals with electrodes implanted in the forebrain is less than 97.5. So students, this is the procedure that we have learned, that if we are getting an SPSS output, then how to interpret the results for the unknown population median.